He opened the door every morning to find free eggs waiting for him from the girl next door. But as soon as he turned around, he tossed every single one into the trash. Finally, one day, she accidentally caught him in the act. She snatched the eggs back from him, her face burning with anger and humiliation. In that moment, she finally saw him for what he really was. The boy she had adored for years turned out to be so utterly worthless. After that day, Julie stopped acknowledging Bryce altogether, but Bryce started to regret it. Let's rewind 7 years. That summer, Julie's family moved in right across the street from Bryce's. The very first time Julie laid eyes on Bryce, with those brilliant, star-like eyes of his, she was completely captivated. As they ran around playing and chasing each other, their hands accidentally touched. Looking into those mesmerizing eyes, Julie felt something she had never felt before, what people called a heart flutter. She believed that if you liked someone, you should be brave enough to show it. So every time she saw Bryce, she would run up and give him a big, unapologetic hug. Before long, the kids at school started teasing them, calling them a little couple, and even making up silly songs about them. Bryce was mortified, but he never had the guts to tell her directly. By 6th grade, he finally came up with a plan. He pretended to go after Sherry, the most popular girl in school, and made sure to put on a show right where Julie could see. The plan worked. Julie started pulling away from him, but the good times didn't last long. Bryce's buddy Gary, who had a crush on Sherry himself, spilled the whole truth about Bryce's scheme. Sherry dumped him in a fit of rage, and Julie, watching from afar, couldn't help but smirk to herself. Still, Bryce's aversion to Julie didn't fade one bit. Ever since the Bryces had moved in, his father had constantly made snide remarks through the window about Julie's family, calling them tacky country bumpkins, making fun of their messy, overgrown yard and their beat-up old car, and scoffing at Julie's dad for being a broke wannabe painter. Over time, Bryce absorbed those prejudices without even realizing it. Julie, meanwhile, had no clue about any of this. One day, while her dad was painting in the yard, he asked her a question: "Why do you like Bryce?" She said it was probably because of his eyes. Her dad told her that if you really like someone, you have to look at the whole person, not just one part. At the time, she didn't quite understand what he meant. Not long after, Julie climbed a tall sycamore tree by the side of the road to retrieve a broken kite. The higher she climbed, the more breathtaking the view became. The whole town, the fields, and the distant mountains spread out before her in the sunlight. So beautiful it took her breath away. She eagerly invited Bryce to come up and see it with her, but he always made up some excuse to say no. From then on, Julie fell in love with that spot. She climbed the tree every day to watch the clouds roll at sunrise, to see the golden rays pierce through the morning mist, and to take in the dazzling, ever-changing colors along the horizon at dusk. Little by little, she came to understand what her father meant when he said that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Maybe before, she had only seen the sparkle in Bryce's eyes, but now her gaze had turned towards something much bigger. But good things never last forever. One morning, Julie climbed up as usual, only to find a crew of workers gathered below. The owner had decided to cut the tree down to build a house. Julie's heart shattered. She sat perched up there, refusing to come down, stubbornly guarding the one place that felt like hers. When Bryce showed up to wait for the school bus, she begged him through her tears to help her stop them. No matter how much she pleaded, Bryce didn't budge. He turned around, got on the bus, and left her up there crying alone. More and more people gathered below. Even reporters and firefighters showed up, but Julie still wouldn't move an inch. It wasn't until her father climbed up to get her that she finally gave in, tears streaming down her face. The sycamore tree came down, and it felt like a part of Julie died with it. She zoned out in class, and Bryce, the boy who once made her heart skip, suddenly seemed irrelevant. After that, she never took the school bus from that stop again. She rode her bike the long way around every day just to avoid the stump that broke her heart. Later, her father came into her room and presented her with a painting, a perfect rendering of that very sycamore tree. From then on, Julie woke up to that tree every morning and fell asleep looking at it every night. She slowly stopped crying and stopped hurting, because now she was starting to see things beyond the tree, and she began to question whether her love for Bryce was even worth it anymore. Without Julie clinging to him, Bryce felt a sense of relief. But every time he caught a glimpse of her looking so down because of the tree, something gnawed at him inside. Still, he never once reached out to comfort her. Then one day, his grandfather, who had just moved in, handed him the newspaper. Julie's protest had made the front page. Grandpa said she was a girl with real backbone and even suggested inviting her over. Bryce brushed it off, but Grandpa told him, not everyone gets to meet a girl like that. Bryce didn't take it to heart. Soon after, the school held its science fair, and Julie won first place with her chick hatching project. She raised the chicks in her yard, and as they grew, her family ended up with more eggs than they could eat. so she decided to share some with the Bryces. Deep down, she was still holding out some hope for Bryce. But Bryce's father thought the eggs were unsanitary and told him to return them. Bryce, however, couldn't bring himself to face Julie, so he just took the eggs and threw them away every time. Until that day when Julie caught him red-handed. She felt a crushing blow to her pride. The pain was no less than the day the sycamore tree came down. That night, Julie told her parents she wanted to fix up the yard. When her father asked why, she finally admitted it was because Bryce's family had mocked them for being messy. But the Jules were only renters. Fixing the yard was the landlord's job. On top of that, Julie's dad had a disabled younger brother who needed long-term care. And the whole family had been scraping by just to cover his expensive treatment. The leaky washing machine, the broken AC, and now their daughter. Hurt and humiliated, her mother finally lost it and started venting about how hard life had been. But her father insisted he would never let his brother go without. Her parents started arguing, a full-blown fight. It was the first time Julie had ever seen them go at each other like that, and she was flooded with guilt. But it was also through that fight that she learned she had an uncle she'd never even met. After dinner, her father came to apologize and opened up about his brother for the very first time. Before bed, her mother came to comfort her too, telling her how kind and strong her father was, and that even though money was tight, she had never once regretted marrying him. Wrapped in her parents' love, Julie never felt like she was missing out on anything. She decided to fix up the yard herself, but this time, it wasn't for Bryce. After the egg incident, Julie completely cut Bryce off. But Bryce started wanting to get closer to her. Every time he tried, she dodged him like the plague. On the way home from school one day, Bryce was shocked to see his usually quiet grandpa chatting and laughing with Julie, helping her work on the yard. That night, Grandpa sat him down and said seriously, "A person's character is built from childhood. I don't want you to turn into someone people can't stand. You owe Julie an apology." His grandpa's words made Bryce realize just how much he had hurt her. So the next day, he finally worked up the courage to apologize for the eggs. Julie wasn't angry anymore, but she didn't have much to say to him either. From that day on, Grandpa went over to help Julie with the yard every day, and the two of them got along famously. He genuinely admired this thoughtful, strong-willed girl. But his grandfather's actions rubbed Bryce's dad the wrong way. He accused Grandpa of spending time with a stranger instead of playing catch with his own grandson. He even made cruel jokes about Julie's disabled uncle, mocking their bad genes. Grandpa fired back. Julie's uncle had the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck at birth. If he'd gotten enough oxygen, he'd be just as healthy as your son. It turned out that Bryce had also been born with the cord wrapped around his neck. He just happened to have been saved because the medical care was better. Hearing that sent a chill down Bryce's spine. If he hadn't been saved, would his dad treat him just as coldly? Later, Grandpa took him to where the sycamore tree used to stand and said, "She's a good girl. Not everyone gets to meet a girl like that. Sometimes, if you let her go, you'll never find another one." Grandpa's words cracked open a window in Bryce's closed-off world. He started wondering who was Julie, really. He realized he had never actually made an effort to understand her. He pulled out the old newspaper with Julie on the front page, and as he read it, he started to see faintly at first the light in her that he had always overlooked. The next day, Bryce's mom suggested inviting Julie's family over for dinner. Everyone was on board except for his sharp-tongued father. Around that time, Bryce found himself thinking about Julie all the time, even sneaking glances at her during class. He didn't know why he had become this way. His friend Gary told him it was just guilt over the eggs, not real feelings. Gary even made a snide remark about Julie's family having defective genes, and Bryce wanted to defend her, but instead he just nodded along. What he didn't know was that Julie was hiding behind the bookshelf and heard every word. Bryce's silence confirmed to Julie that she would never like him again. The night of the dinner finally came. Bryce spent 3 hours getting ready, only to be met with Julie's cold attitude. She told him, "I heard what you and Gary said in the library." Bryce tried to explain he knew his friend was wrong, he just hadn't spoken up. Julie replied, "So you're a coward." At the dinner table, Bryce's dad kept making passive-aggressive digs, bringing up Julie's disabled uncle out of nowhere. Julie's dad just responded calmly, but the tension was thick. Then Julie's brothers started talking about their passion for music, and suddenly, Bryce's dad went quiet. It turned out he had once been a talented saxophonist in his younger days, but had given up his musical dreams for various reasons. The more passionately they talked about their dreams, the quieter Bryce's dad became. Watching all this, Julie seemed to see right through him, the decay and cowardice hiding beneath his smug surface. She didn't say a single word to Bryce the whole evening, only apologizing for her earlier outburst as she left, calm and distant. The moment Julie's family walked out the door, Bryce's dad started spewing insults again and even slapped his own daughter for defending her aunt. Bryce saw it all. He replayed his dad's mocking words and behavior at the table, and it hit him. Maybe his father's cruelty was just a mask for his own weakness. It dawned on him that he shouldn't be living in the shadow of his dad or his friends. That night, for the first time, Bryce had thoughts that were truly his own. Soon after, the school held its annual charity lunch auction, where girls bid on lunch baskets prepared by boys to win a meal with them. Bryce heard Julie was going to participate, so he made sure to prepare a basket of his own. On the auction stage, he was secretly hoping Julie would bid on him, but she bid on another guy's lunch instead. His heart sank. Even though he was sitting across from the prettiest girl in school, he couldn't take his eyes off Julie. Watching her laugh and chat with someone else, Bryce finally snapped. He ran over, grabbed her hand, and tried to kiss her. Julie pulled away. She had dreamed of this moment for years, but not today, not like this. His friend came out and scolded him for ditching the school beauty to chase after a weirdo. Bryce argued back. This was the first time he had ever defended Julie. But he still didn't understand that real love had to be built on mutual respect, not just a spur-of-the-moment impulse. Feeling humiliated and disrespected in front of everyone, Julie resolved to never speak to him again. But Bryce kept coming around, trying to apologize, only to be shut out. He called 1,000,000 times, she never picked up. After a few days, the silence finally settled. Julie thought he had given up, but then came the sound of digging in her yard. Bryce was out there digging holes in her carefully manicured lawn. She was about to march out and stop him when she saw him lower a tiny sapling into one of the holes. She looked closer. It was a baby sycamore tree. Something deep inside Julie, something that had been quiet for so long, finally stirred. She pushed open the door and walked slowly toward him. Their eyes met. Bryce's eyes still sparkled like stars, just as they had 7 years ago when they first met. For the first time, Julie saw in Bryce the sum of parts greater than the whole. And that light wasn't just in his eyes anymore. It came from the kindness awakening in his soul, and the courage he was showing to change for love. For Julie, this love had been a stepping stone for growth. She had risen through her pain and gained a clearer vision of the world. For Bryce, this love was more like a mirror to his soul. It reflected his cowardice, his prejudice, and his tendency to just go with the flow. It taught him how to face his mistakes and gave him the bravery to change for love. In the end, the true meaning of love was this. It let each of them find a better version of themselves reflected in the other's eyes.